Hi, everyone. I hope you're all having an amazing week. I'm so excited to share this episode with you because I have a special guest. Her name is Jenna Reiss. Jenna is a healer, a writer, and a breathwork coach. You may not have heard about breathwork before, but you will know all about it by the time you finish this episode. We dive into what breathwork is. We talk about Jenna's journey and how it started off working in marketing for a corporate type job and how she just knew that she was missing something and how she transitioned into really this amazing gift that she has shared with so many people. We talk about some of the success stories and also some of her upcoming workshops and different classes that you yourself can try out if you want to work with Jenna and see what breathwork is like for you. So she does have a special upcoming workshop called Expanded Wild Hearts, and that's on September 12th. You can also find out more events that she has at Jenna Reiss, REISS.com, or follow her on Instagram at Jenna M. Reiss. I know you guys are going to love this episode, so thank you for tuning in and enjoy. Hi, Jenna. How are you?
I'm great, Tim. How are you doing?
Good. Thank you. It's so nice to talk to you.
Yes, I'm so happy to be here. Always love hearing your voice.
Yes, and I'm so excited for everyone listening for you to share your magic with them because I know how empowering not only just you are in general, but the power of breathwork. And for those of you listening who aren't aware, Jenna and I met at Unplug a couple years ago, and as soon as we met, it was just this genuine connection, and she's such an awesome, knowledgeable person. Maybe it's because we're both air signs. I don't know. But I'm going to have you start off with sharing a little bit about your journey and how you were inspired to kind of start on this path and what really brought you to where you are today.
Yes, and by the way, I totally agree. It was this immediate connection with you, and it has to have something to do with our signs. I actually think that my signs had a lot to do with what brought me into the work that I'm doing now. My background, I started my career in marketing. Well, I started before that, but jumped around between a few different jobs as we do, I'd say in your 20s, and then landed in marketing. And I really loved it, and I built a really great career in marketing. But I really could feel that something within me was missing, that I wasn't tapping into, that I wasn't connecting with. I always wanted a creative job, and I certainly had created that experience for myself, but there was something in me that I wasn't supporting. And as it goes in life, I had some traumatic experiences happen to myself and my family, and as we were stepping through some of that pain and that trauma, as one does in the early stages of trauma, you don't always see and feel what it is that you're being taught, but over time, you can see how it starts to shake you up, and really that is exactly what my pain did to me. It shook me up. It shook me out of this sleep and shook me out of the fear that I felt that I had about leaving my career that I had built. I had built this successful career in marketing, and I was afraid of having to start over. And when that pain shook me up, it shook me out of that fear to see and really feel that there was so much more that I was really missing. And that fear suddenly became less about staying afraid of what I would do if I left, and more a fear of what would happen if I stayed, what would happen if I never took those chances. And so I started on my healing path. I could see and feel the pain was eating away at me, and then I had some changes I needed to make in my personal life. And luckily, I was taught meditation when I was a child. My mom and a therapist had taught me my first meditation when I was 5 years old. So I had this background of understanding what meditation was, having worked with meditation, but I always felt really triggered as soon as I stopped the meditation. And so I wanted to understand why I couldn't hold this space, this state of mind, this state of being that I reached, that I felt like I was in when I was in a meditation for a longer term. And as soon as I really asked that question, I would say the universe provided me with my answer. And there I began working with breathwork, and started my journey in merging the two together. So now that's what I do. I'm a breathwork meditation coach, so that I can teach the tools that have helped me over my lifetime. Breathwork, which is an active meditation, and meditation. So I teach traditional shamatha vipassana practice. practice, which is of the Buddhist lineage. And I use these practices together mixed with my intuition and what I call intuitive coaching to help people heal and live life more intentionally.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think something that you said I wanted to bring up again is when you were at that point of just kind of being at rock bottom, right? Life throws you a curveball. And it's that it's like that threshold that it's like if you weren't in that situation, you may have never discovered this.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. I really, it's hard when you're in that depth of pain or at that bottom, because everyone, of course, has their own version of it. It's hard to see the lessons that are being taught to you in those moments. And I think that's okay. I don't believe that we have to see the lessons right away or create the fix. I think that's actually part of what really happens when you step into your own healing, is that you do really see that it's not about fixing. It's not about solving something. It's about being with it in its entirety, in those moments, in the depths of that emotion, so that you can move through it when you're ready to move through it. But only when we really feel it, when we really allow ourselves to feel what that is there to teach us, do we often then find the way to step forward. So yeah, and the rock bottom is something I think so many people understand because we've experienced it. And I also think it's okay. It's important to me, that when I work with clients and talk with even people in sessions and classrooms, that it's important that we don't try to make ourselves see those lessons before we really need to. But as soon as you're ready to start asking the questions about what this is about, ask the questions. Just find the words to ask the questions, and it absolutely is possible to let yourself be shaken out of that. One of my favorite sayings is, I don't believe everything happens for a reason, but I do really believe that things have reasons for happening, and that we can allow ourselves to soften into that.
I love that. So when you started with meditation, when you were younger, what was your first breathwork experience like? Because that's so much more intense, but in a beautiful way. Like you said, I think it kind of comes to you when you need it. So if you want to share that, like your first breathwork experience, and then you can kind of talk a little bit about what breathwork is for those listening who aren't aware.
Sure, absolutely. Well, it's interesting. I do really believe that the practice finds you when you're meant for it. So usually there's this element of being called to it. And it's a subtle feeling. Sometimes it's a really loud voice, but you can feel that feeling of when you're called to something. And it's about listening to that call. And that was exactly what happened to me with breathwork. And in my very first breathwork experience, I actually had a vision for the rest of my life, not to set any expectations for anybody with their first breathwork experience. But I had been asking the question for a while at that point. I had crawled myself out of that rock bottom place, and I was working with a coach and a therapist and a healer, and had a team of people supporting me. And I was asking questions about what was next for me. I knew that there was something different that I needed, but I didn't know what it was. So I had been meditating and had been doing these experiences. And so by nature of asking those questions and really putting myself in that position, I believe that's why I was able to have this vision in my first breathwork experience of seeing my relationship to breathwork and how that was meant to be taken. And I should preface that from there, I had not really experienced any visions or visualizations from traditional meditation practices before that. I had been meditating for many years, and I always really liked the feeling, and I could feel a sense of coming home to myself when I meditated. But I always felt really, I could get an email from a boss right after I meditated and feel immediately triggered back into my old self, into defensive patterns. But for me, breathwork changed that. It was a way for me to get into and see how much energy was stopping me from really being me, my true self. And I didn't understand what that meant at the time, but I knew that it felt good. I really had just identified it as, it feels good to feel like this. It feels good to be myself. And then I noticed that the more that I did the practice, the more I started to clear through some of that clutter. And so really, it was that first session that set the stage for everything else for me and where I was going to be taking it. And, over the years, I'd say my teachings are the lessons and the healing moments that I've been through. So, just as much as I'm a teacher of this work, I'm a student of this work, I'm a student of the universe, and those two really go hand in hand. So it is important that I'm always using my own tools and tactics and techniques within myself, because I can always feel it as soon as I'm not. And that really is what allowed me to see that I needed, my body was in need of more breath work meditation at that time than traditional meditation. So I actually for a while really stepped away from traditional meditation and just started working with breath work and the breath in order to clear and cleanse and get into what I needed. And then I also can add that over the years, I stepped back into meditation, and I found that breath work and having my practice with the breath allowed me to really deepen my practice with meditation. So I tell that to a lot of people who say, meditation is not for me, or I've tried it, or I want to try it, but I don't know how to do it. All those beautiful meditation myths. Breath work might be a great place to start, and maybe they just have some energy that wants to be moved a little bit bigger or more than they're necessarily conscious of. And when they do that, who knows, their meditation practice might deepen too.
Yeah, of course. I think it's so important just kind of going into it, not knowing what to expect. In my own personal experience, that's kind of what it was. Like I went into it just not even knowing what breath work really was. And even for days after, like you mentioned, you just are kind of in this, you're so present, you're so in the moment in life, just kind of, you're going with the flow.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And you bring up a great point. I to define breathwork and really help people understand that difference, right? And I would just say that the difference in that is meditation is using the mind to help heal the mind, right? Breathwork is more of an active meditation, and so you're using the breath to help heal the body. And so both are powerful and important and impactful, and it's just about allowing yourself to really see what that means for you. But definitely, going, like you said, going into the practices with no expectations is what can really allow you to be open to experiencing what you're in need of experiencing.
Right. No, I know there's a couple different kinds of breath work. I'm sure there's so many more than what I'm aware of, but breath of fire is one of them. If you want to just kind of touch on a few of like the main ones and kind of what a typical session looks like.
Yeah. So there's tons of them. I can't speak to the specifics of all of them because I'm not a teacher of all of them. And I actually think that's an important thing in our world. That when you're wanting to dive into different breath practices, that you just look for a teacher of that practice, because a lot of teachers aren't, even though I work with the breath, I don't work with all of those techniques, but there's holotropic breath work, there's breath of fire, the form of breath work there's Wim Hof, which is a very popular one that a lot have heard about. The form that I teach is specifically just known as breath work. It has a lineage in pranayama breathwork techniques, and it is a 2-step breathing technique. So you breathe through an open mouth, and you actually breathe deep into the belly, and then you breathe into the heart, and then you exhale, both breaths happening through the mouth. And what I find with this practice, with this technique, and I have done all of those techniques, I'm just not a teacher of all of them, is that I really fell in love with this one. And the reason, over the years I've discovered, I didn't know why at first, but over the years I discovered why I fell in love with this one is because it's a little bit softer in that it is a more feminine rooted practice. So it's rooted in the belief that you are your own healer, and that you have a facilitator and a teacher there to support you and to hold space for you and to create a safe space for you and to make sure you feel safe. That said, it is your responsibility to heal what is your energy. So I love this practice and this technique because it really leans into the softness, into the feminine energy of being one's own healer, and nurturing that and empowering that, because that can be so empowering when we take the responsibility for that. And that's why I really fell in love with this technique specifically. But they're all really incredible. I mean, they all have profound impacts. And I certainly suggest that people, if you're interested in it, like dip your toe into which one you feel called to do and you feel drawn to, or even try them all and see which ones, you connect with. To me, the knowledge, the belief of being one's own healer, the empowerment behind that statement, and the love that's within that statement, it's just rooted to me in so much love, is why I teach this way. When a client comes to me and they have a question, I don't know what self-love is. I don't know what that looks like or means. What an empowering question. I could just give an answer that's my definition, that's based on my experience, that's based on, the energy that I read from self-love, or that I understand of self-love. But how much more impactful is it when it lands in your own body as an aha moment, as clarity, as being your own healer? And that's just really what helps me, what drew me, what empowered me to step forward with this practice.
Right. And how each person is on their own individual journey. And it's so beautiful just watching it unfold and kind of it becoming their own in the process.
Yes. I think that's such an important statement you just said, becoming their own, right? There is this interesting element right now that is the balance between, to me, it's this balance between mastery and being your own, right? So we can take this knowledge, ancient knowledge and wisdom, and study it and learn about it and dive into your lineage and talk to other lineages and have respect for, the history of where these practices and tools come from. We can let these practices and tools stand on their own. We live in a world that is so beautifully empowering creativity that I think sometimes we believe we have to take those experiences and turn them into our own. But really, if we look at those experiences and hold them for what they really truly are, for the power and the impact that they already have, and teach from that space, it really does allow each individual to have their own unique experience with this ancient, powerful work. It really, to me, you hit that something so important, because, to be creative with work is phenomenal and so fun. And, absolutely we can make some wonderful things our own. And also there's real power in history and knowledge, and taking that and bringing that forward and empowering each individual to let that information land uniquely within their own body.
Right. Do you see any correlations between maybe some of the body sensations or kind of the experience in itself between what they may be feeling on the inside, whether it's, the hands can kind of clamp up, or the sweats, the tears? Do you see any correlation between that?
Great question. So yes, and then my answer is always going to be a little annoying. I always say it's like yes and no. Yes, we can talk about the hands. The hands are an extension of the heart. So depending on the form of clamping that's showing up, it's probably a safe assumption, but it's still an assumption, though it is a safe to consider, I should say it like that, right? It's safe to consider that if the hands are really cramping up, that there's some energy that's feeling, that you're holding in your heart. I'm not using blocked or stuck in your heart, though it might be blocked or stuck in your heart. But I think it's important to make those distinctions within one's own self or one's own body. Though a generalization would be the hands are an extension of the heart. So if someone came to me and wanted to talk about that, what was happening in their hands, that could be something we would talk about. But more than that, if someone comes to me and they're saying, I'm feeling this tingling sensation in my hands, and this is how they felt, what does that mean? I would really push that question back on them before I even say, your hands are an extension of your heart. I would rather encourage them to talk a little bit more about it. So, okay, so how did it feel in your hands? Interesting that it felt that way. Did you not like that? what is maybe their human judgments about the fact that they felt that way. And usually we can uncover a little bit more about the experience that they were having and what was happening specifically with their hands or with their heart. And then I can help, have those conversations by tying it together to, okay, so how does that relate to your heart, right? How does that experience that you were feeling and talking about, how does that relate to something that you might be holding in your heart or might feel uncomfortable or unsafe in your heart? So often, the sensations that are felt in a breathwork practice can really be uncovered and discovered by each individual themselves. Sometimes they just want a little bit of extra support and a little bit of extra help in processing that. But it can do an incredible wonder to even just step outside of a breathwork session when you open your eyes, to grab your journal and write down what you do know. Because what you do know about that body sensation that was happening is probably even more than the practitioner or the teacher could give you. Right. I do feel really strongly that it's important that we lean on that, because each person knows their body better than any a healer could ever know for them. And then that side, for me, it's important to lean on my own intuition. Like, what am I intuitively feeling from them as they're talking about those sensations? What is my intuition saying as I'm feeling? What is my body feeling as they're talking about this energy? And so then sometimes, depending on how well I know the clients or not, I'll talk a little bit more about that and see if that hits anything within them to help them move through some of that energy.
Yeah. So the sensations are really just, the external sensations are really just the tip of the iceberg for everything that's going on internally. So what do you think? Because I know as soon as what you brought up about the thoughts coming to you, or kind of what you experience from the mind, from the heart, how it comes to you, what do you think that is? Like those pictures that you see, those thoughts, words, whatever comes to you, and it's like that gut instinct. Would you define that?
One word.
Like intuition, or is it more?
Spirit.
Yeah.
It's spirit. I just got goosebumps as I said that. We can define it further. It could be intuition. I mean, it's certainly intuition, but it's not, you're not alone in the experience. It is helping, breathwork helps move some of that negative energies or limiting beliefs or thought patterns out of the way so that you can have access to really that true self within. So we can say intuition, because that's the space that intuition lives, right? When you're not standing in your own way or thinking too much about things, you're able to have that connection to imagery, to strong intuitive feelings, to realizations. What is an aha moment? When it lands in your body, it just lands in your body. The only way to describe that is intuition. You know it to be true within your body. So it is intuition. The one word answer of spirit, and I use the word spirit interchangeably with the word universe. I'm comfortable on either end, so we can call it what feels right to you, but this practice really helps create a relationship with you and spirit, and that energy that's moving through you, that's giving you those images, that's giving you this guidance, or giving you and I also want to make sure that that's clear. It's okay if you don't get images. A lot of people don't get images. They just feel better, feel good after breathwork, and that's completely okay too. People have intuition, works in different ways within each individual's body. Some see images, some see words, some see, feel a feeling, have that clairsentience, which is an inner knowing, all of which are completely normal experiences in breathwork. All of it still could be chalked up to, as simple, as big, and as important as spirit moving through you and helping guide you, so you can live life the way you're meant to be living it, whatever that means, right? Live life more intentionally, live connected to your higher self, connected to your purpose.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think spirit is all encompassing, and it really represents the vast of everything.
Yeah, it does. And it also really triggers some people. I mean, some people have a hard time even having it be about, having that be the word. So I don't always even share that. I mean, I'm not sure if Tim, you and I have even ever talked about that. That's what that is. And you've done many breathwork sessions.
Right.
And it's because it's often a word that can hit some things within people. But I think it's important, that it's okay for you to not know exactly or what you believe, what you believe in spirit or not, and you can still have a really powerful, impactful experience within yourself.
Right. That's awesome. And a lot of the clients that you've worked with for a while now, and even new clients, do you have any transformation stories that you would like to share, or just personal experiences that you've witnessed? I'm sure you have so many.
Oh my gosh, so many. It's just fun to even think about. There really isn't anything like when you get those emails and those comments from people on how good, how they're feeling, and they're just really reflecting. I would say, one of my favorite, a recent one, I'll just share a recent example of a client. We've been talking a lot about the judgment that she's been feeling in her relationship, and the judgment that's reflecting right at her. And so what we're really diving into, and the work that we're really doing, is going into this place of exploring, where that she feels that judgment within herself, why she's feeling that judgment within herself. And so we'll do have some conversation around that. And then also, how, and really that's a question, how can she move through that judgment to return to a place of love within herself? And that's not something that, we get to say that will happen at the end of a session. We can't say that will happen at the end of 4 months of working together. What we can say is that this work continues to crack her open so that she sees the judgment for what it is, as not a part of her, as not a part of her own authentic self. And she starts to change as a result of that, the story within her life. So to me, there is nothing more impactful than, hearing someone reflect that back, that whether it's in one single session or it's an overtime experience where they simply go, I had never known how much I was standing in my own way, and I can see clearly now who I really am. And that's what this one client shared this week. That cracks me wide open, because that's exactly, the purpose to me of this work, is to help you feel your natural luminous self. And the other story that came to mind is my client. I'm writing a book, which I've been doing for a little while. So this story I just wrote the other day was the client who, when she first called me, said, I don't know what it means to love myself. It's a little more direct for her, but to have the conversation of, I don't know what it means to love myself, to, however long later, at some point on her journey, sharing, I can't believe it can feel this good within my own body.
Wow.
Is just everything. I mean, that is, to do this work within yourself, you then create the change, because you become the ripple effect within the world. So people start seeing that and wanting some of that experience. And they, whether they start doing breath work or they start doing their own version of that, this is the change that we're creating, is really going deep within oneself, our own conscious and unconscious belief systems, and cracking those wide open so that we can look at these often very difficult, very confusing feelings and release fear that's been built up in our bodies. And to me, that is, that's what gives me goosebumps. That's why I do the work that I do.
Yeah. And firsthand, you're seeing this transformation of a person going from point A to point B, and it's life-changing. Mm-hmm. You're changing people's lives.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, I will accept that, because I always accept a compliment. That's not true. I work to always accept a compliment, but it also is, I can't do anything unless people are willing to show up. People we have to be willing to show up for those difficult experiences, the difficult emotions. We have to be willing to change, and the willingness to change is really all that it takes. The willingness to grow, the willingness to open is really all it takes. And then the more you show up to it, the more you heal, and there's just limitless potential when we live in that space.
Yeah, for sure. And something else that I wanted to kind of transition into is you do corporate breath work also. So do you see any differences between doing it maybe with a group of people, coworkers who work together in this corporate mindset, and especially with you working in marketing previously? Do you see any like connection there?
So many connections. Yeah, I really do. I mean, so I'll share the probably main difference is that oftentimes in a corporate breathwork, really what we just talked about, that's actually a very nice transition, because what I just mentioned was the people having this willingness to show up, this willingness to change. When you walk into a class on your own, you're choosing on your own, I'm going to spend my time here, I'm going to spend my money here, I'm going to engage, I'm going to spend my energy here, right? When you're walking into the class and it's in the corporate setting, you kind of have chosen that, right? So maybe the company's paid for it, or the company's just put it on the schedule, and you have the option to show up or don't. So if you have the option to show up or don't, you still are being, have this option, but there's less investment because you haven't exchanged one-on-one with the practice itself. And what I mean by that is really simply, you haven't chosen individually to seek this out, to find this work. So that's really the only difference. But that does create a whole ripple of other differences. So, it can create an experience where sometimes people feel a little less closed-minded, or a little less likely to want to crack open, to want to feel their feelings. I mean, a big part of this work is breathwork aims at helping move energy from the body, and your energy that is moving from the body is often emotion, whatever kind of emotion. It doesn't always, it's not always sad or fearful. It can be really joyful emotion. But sometimes when we're in the corporate environment, it can feel, with our corporate team or our boss or the president, it can feel a little scarier to want to crack open and to want to feel those feelings. I'd also say on the flip side of that, then what I have seen when corporate clients bring me in and we do these sessions, when they don't make them mandatory and when they make them an experience that people can get to choose to be a part of, and they have a healthy immune system within their company, or healthy-ish, I'll say, oftentimes it can make for an incredible session within the company. Teams feel connective, teams feel seen, they feel heard and understood by one another. The CEO doing it with the assistant, there's no difference between the energies of those two individuals other than this title that's been given. But when they lay down, you're stripped of your title. It's not about the title. And you go through your own individual healing experience. And so there can be this really incredible, connective, expansive experience that comes out of that. It really just depends on the company and the environment and the culture and the team. But I've been hired by my old companies that I worked for, by my corporate clients that a lot of my corporate clients are actually one individual that came to a session, and then they liked it so much they brought it to their boss or brought it to their company themselves. They felt passionate about that. And then that's how we ended up working together consistently. So corporate, I'd say, is only different with that small, but also can be big, subtle, difference in the energy as to when and why someone shows up to the practice. But it doesn't have to be that way. I think it's really about if every individual, if that's what a company's wanting to heal to, if they're like, we don't have a great, immune system within our company, or our culture hasn't been focused, we haven't focused on culture, we haven't focused on diversity, we haven't, had these important conversations about unconscious belief systems, well, then we would just start there. I'll meet the company right where they are. And that's a completely powerful thing to do is, there's nothing wrong with meeting someone right where they are. We would just start right there.
That's so powerful. And I'm just thinking from personal experience. Imagine if every company, you know, in the United States or the world just had some exposure, one session, how it could be changing the whole dynamic of the team. And they may not be our best friends, but we spend 40 hours a week with them, you know?
Yes.
Company culture is so important.
It's so important, and you bring up such an important part in that. It's, you spend 40 hours a week with this person, the culture is so important. It's supporting the whole self, right? Like, if every company was doing some form of reflective work within themselves consistently, you're supporting the whole self. Like, a company happy hour is, you know, wonderful. I just had a client who, she hired a corporate client who's bringing me in to her clients, right? So she said to me, well, I don't know that my team is going to be open to this. My team really likes to do the company happy hour. And I said, no problem. You'd be surprised, however, because a lot of people, the company happy hour, we all know can be wonderful and fun, and it opens up a different part of you.
Right.
But when a company supports the whole self, all versions of the self that makes each individual employee, there are some real openings we can get to, real problems we can solve, real change that we can make. And, you know, that's where I'd say those are the companies that become the change makers.
Yeah, of course. And I could see it not only helping the self, which of course it does, but the company itself too will thrive, you know, the productivity and efficiency and everything.
Oh yeah, completely. I mean, it makes people more creative. It makes them want to connect with one another. It makes them feel like they can take time off work and then come back and have that sense of balance, right? We absolutely supporting the self, supporting the whole self does support the company.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, for sure. Now tell me a little bit about Expanded Wild Hearts.
My baby.
Your baby.
It sure is. It's so fun. I have one coming up. I don't know when this is going to air, but I do have one coming up on September 12th on Saturday. So, you know, pre-COVID, Expanded Wild Hearts was the in-person retreats. So it was all in person. It was anywhere from 2 to 4 days of the curriculum that I created. Well, that Spirit helped me create, I should say. Spirit gave to me to create, all centered on the concept that when we move through fear, we return to love. And when we return to love, that's where I believe we become the change makers. That's where we can take our passion and utilize it for the better. We can take that passion and the desired change and implement them and bring people in and invite people into the change with us. So the Expanded Wild Hearts program really came from the concept of, I want to help people move from fear and return to love. So usually we spend the first, depends on how long my programs are, but we spend the first part of the experience focused on the fear and talking about the energy of fear, how it lives in our bodies and what those fears are. And then the second part of the experience on returning to love, creating how we can create a love bubble around ourselves, not for protection, but for expansion. And when we do that, when we live in the energy of true love, and really not straying back into the fear, but in the energy of true, authentic love, that there's this expansion that happens within your heart. And that's where I want to live always. So that's why I created the program. That was 2 to 4 days when it was pre-COVID. And what I ended up doing early stages of this year was seeing if it wanted to be an online experience. I wasn't sure. And so come in about April, I sat down with my agenda, which I'm using air quotes around because the agenda is always used lightly. The experience is definitely what people bring to the experience. So I like to let it be a little malleable there. But I sat down with it to look at it to see if it wanted to become an online experience, and it did. It told really what I felt was that it told me that it was a timeless experience that always we can return to and return to again whenever we need centering or feel called to move through fear and return to love. And so I turned it into a 1-day online experience. And that's what it is now. Now we spend the first half of the day on fear and the second half on returning to love.
Yay, that's awesome.
Thank you. It's so important to me. You know, I use the phrase love bubble. I'll just share a little fun personal story, but my fiance proposed to me over a year ago, and we were on the beach, and it was this magical moment where I felt my fears that I had been working through around marriage melt off my body.
Wow.
And when I stepped into the days and then months after, I was floored at how open my heart felt. My heart, I kept describing it as a love bubble. I said, oh my God, I'm in a love bubble. I'm in a love bubble. That's what this feels like. Everybody deserves to feel this love bubble. And it really sparked this concept to me of why can't we all experience the love bubble? What is the love bubble? And I dove in deeper, and that was part of the inspiration on, in Expanded Wild Hearts, I have the love bubble meditation where we create that and talk about how that feels and spend some time in the creation and the feeling of the love bubble, because I feel like when we let the fears melt off our body, that we can return to love and live in the love bubble as the love bubble. So that's a fun little personal anecdote about how that came to be.
That's so true. And something that you said that I think is so important, and I'm really glad you said it, the part about really pinpointing fear and what fear is and highlighting it. Because so many people, I think, will turn away, or they have a broad idea of what fear is, but they're not. And this is totally fine. We all do it from time to time. We're human, but they don't really pinpoint what the fear is. Where is it coming from? What is it? Not necessarily just a broad term that they may use to disguise the fear, but really digging into it and seeing it for what it is and releasing it.
No, absolutely, Tim. And I'll add to that by saying, and how does it live in your body, right? Because when you can get a little bit clearer on that, and I will say, of course, you know, it wasn't like when my fiance proposed, those fears didn't just melt off and I hadn't done any work with them. I had been doing work with those fears for the last, 5 years. And so to feel them melt off my body was the result of this work I had been doing and how they had been living in my body, and understanding how does it live here? What does it do for me, if it does anything, or what do I believe it does for me, so that you can release them when you're ready, right? Because you don't just get to go, I'm done. Well, sometimes we do. Sometimes you get to go, I'm done with this fear. I release you, and you are done. And sometimes it's not that simple. So absolutely, it is about pinpointing and learning the fears, so we can identify what it is when it's them, what they are, so that when they're ready to be let go, they do.
Awesome. Yeah, for sure. For sure. And for those listeners who want to try out breathwork and maybe get into consistency and a habit of doing it, if you want to talk a little bit about maybe doing it every day, and you also have a 30-day breathwork journey too. So what is the significance behind kind of establishing it as a part of your, whether it's a daily ritual every other day or just a consistent habit?
I created the 30-day breathwork journey because I did it. And when I did it, I explored what it was that it did for me. I don't practice every day now, and I don't think people need to practice every day. I think it really is if they feel called to creating a practice with it. I think it's an incredible way to step into it when you're feeling resistant. So whether you're new to the practice, it's great for new to the practice folks too. When you're new to the practice, you can experience quite a bit of resistance. So it can be a really nice to have the 30-day practice of doing it every single day. Even if you don't do a full length session every day, you can choose the kind of length of the session you want it to be. And you guide yourself through, or you come to workshops as a part of it for yourself. Then it allows you to really move through some of that resistance, so that it really sheds some of that resistance and make it a practice that your body, can get used to. I'll say it like that. It's not exactly the language I want, but no other language is coming to me. but that is why I created the 30-day, was to move through the resistance so that my body could start to understand that, no, this is going to become a part of my life and I'm not going to give in to this resistance, really. And then I'd also say it's for folks that have been doing the practice, or, if they've already had a practice with this and they're not new to it, it could still be great just to help you move through what it is you're wanting to move through. If you're feeling frustrated about something in your life or stuck in an area of your life, that can be a really great way to just upheaval some of the energy and the emotion. The 30-day practice specifically comes with an email a day from me with exercises and tools that I use, that I give in my private session work. And I work through a lot of private clients and in all of my group sessions. So those exercises are put into this format to help you every single day really unstick from whatever it is that's keeping you stuck. So you go through the exercise itself, and then you'll lay down for a breath work. It comes with an audio of my voice guiding you to get you started on your own. And then my playlists are all public on my Spotify profile, so people can always access those, and then just guide themselves through a few songs, as they get comfortable and used to that, and still have these exercises. So they're really every single day moving through whatever it is that might be keeping them stuck, whether they're conscious of that or not. But that's why I really love it. I love it for folks, for all different types of folks that are new to it, or folks that are just looking to make some changes and move through any stickiness, or things are feeling stagnant in your life. It can be really great because you'll likely come to some awareness and some openings within one of those 30 days. And I'd love to hear from you if you do.
Yes. And I think it's so important, especially this year. We were talking earlier, just with having some self-love, daily ritual, habit, self-care. And I think when you do breath work, especially in my personal experience, for the first time, you almost have this high of just wanting to do it again and again. Just because it's so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. It opens your heart. That high you feel is because your heart is so open that you feel better. You feel you. And that feels so good to feel like yourself. And I think, in our world today too, there's just a lot of collective energy that is painful, that is hard. It's a hard year.
Yeah.
It's a hard year. And so it is important that we lean on, tools and allow tools you don't know to come into your life, so that you can feel better, feel more you. Because, when you're overwhelmed in fear, overwhelmed in the pain, or with the collective, it can be hard to make change from those spaces. And so sometimes we just need a little bit of help to get back to opening our heart. But I agree with you. It feels so good because you're you.
Right.
And you're great.
Thank you so much, Jenna. If you want to share some upcoming events or classes that you have with anyone listening who wants to try out breathwork for the first time.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I would just love to have anyone who's interested and wants to come. My next big one is the Expanded Wild Hearts. I have that one starting on September 12th. So that'll be a really fun deep dive. It's the day of September 12th. It's an all-day experience. And all you really need is access to the internet. I'd also say most of the things I have going on right now are the bigger experiences. So I have a group called the Collective Connection. It's a 4-week online breathwork healing experience. So that consists of 4 individual breathwork workshops and 4 meditations, which is the open eye meditation I teach that I love so much. That one isn't happening until October. That's somewhere in October it starts. So that's a great one. And then I always have upcoming workshops. So I'll be putting on another single workshop for September in my shop and in my events page. And that's always where you can find it there. You can find all the events and workshops that I have going on there, and on my Instagram as well, which is just Jenna M. Reiss, Reiss. And then there's ways that you can, do the work on your own, like the 30-day journey. I have a loving boundaries kit that I created this year. It's all about creating boundaries and loving boundaries and using breathwork to help you. And then there's just an audio of my voice guiding you through breathwork on there too. So there's lots of ways to dive in to get the way that you're feeling called to do it.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Jenna. And one last thing I just want to mention really quick is you have such a special gift of just holding the space for people to really just be themselves. And I'm not just saying this, but to really figure themselves out. It's such a special gift, and like I said, the first time we met, it was just this genuine connection, and people feel safe around you, people feel loved. So I encourage everyone listening to follow her and to really just check out more of what she's sharing, because it's very special.
You are special. That touches my heart, Tim. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you so much, Jenna.
Yes, thank you.